Mountain Front Range. So would you welcome, please, our colleagues from the U.S., Stacey and Mark and Joe and Mayor Orr.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacey Gillett, and I'm here with Bloomberg Philanthropies. And at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we are focused on ensuring better, longer lives for the greatest number of people. As you can see here on the slide, we work all over the world, and we work in 5 key areas: in public health, the arts, education, government innovation, the environment, as well as through Bloomberg Associates, which is a pro bono consulting firm that is supporting cities around the world. Through our government innovation investments, we work with mayors and their teams to help them become better problem solvers and to help spread their most promising solutions. One of the programs that we run through the government innovation portfolio is Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge. This is a competition that is designed to help develop bold and inventive ideas to tackle some of cities' most challenging problems. Following successful competitions in the United States, in Europe, and then Latin America and the Caribbean, we returned this year to the United States. We received over 320 applications. Of those, we selected 35 to be finalists, or as we call them, champion cities. We were very excited to introduce a new phase of the Mayor's Challenge competition this year as we return to the U.S., what we refer to as this test and learn phase. And in this phase, we gave each of the champion cities $100,000 and a design coach to test out their ideas with residents. They focused in this phase on 2 key things. The first was on prototyping. This is a process that many of you, I'm sure, know quite well, is very commonly used in the private sector, but is really quite foreign in many governments. And the idea here is that the cities were going to take their idea and they were going to test early and inexpensive versions of their proposed products and services and test them with residents, with the goal, certainly, of making sure that the ideas that they were suggesting were in fact going to meet the needs of the residents that they were seeking to serve. The second focus, and very relatedly, is on resident engagement. As you know, residents are the people that understand the challenges that a city faces the most as they are experiencing them every day. So their participation is critical in designing and developing these new solutions. Though as I, and I'm sure many of you have experienced, resident engagement can be quite challenging. So these cities were focused on coming up with creative and new ways to inspire really meaningful participation by residents in the development of their ideas. So I'm very excited today that we have 3 of our champion cities here to talk about their experience in the Mayor's Challenge, and particularly through this test and learn phase. I would love to start first with Cheyenne, Wyoming, because as you heard, we are lucky to have our leader and mayor here of the city. So Mayor Orr, could you begin with 2 to 3 minutes just to describe Cheyenne's problem, your initial idea, and the experience in the test and learn phase?
Absolutely, thank you, Stacey. It's a pleasure to be here. Toronto's absolutely beautiful. But so is Cheyenne, Wyoming. And one of the things that I ran on just over 2 years ago, we called Fight the Blight. We really have not taken care of abandoned and vacant buildings in our community, and specifically with our downtown and our core, what we call the original city. And about 3 months after taking office, this challenge was proposed, and I told my new team, hey, we're going after this. And we did, and we identified 17 buildings within our original city that were underdeveloped or were vacant. And what we decided to come up with was a project called Buildings with a Purpose. We called it a Match.com, or a Tinder, if you will, for entrepreneurs with building owners, and then with crowdfunding. And so with the testing phase, what we needed to determine was, did Cheyenne really have any entrepreneurs? And if so, were there individuals out there that were maybe willing to crowdsource and help fund their ideas, and then working with the building owners as well too. And so we got our community together. We had several parties, and that really increases civic engagement. And really what we learned out of this was really quite fascinating. when it came to the crowdsource funding, people weren't necessarily interested in receiving an interest or a share in that investment. They were just wanting to do it for the greater good of the community. And then with the building owners, what we learned, as far as who's kind of getting in the way, were the property management groups that were really holding on and not really wanting to lease, say for an 18-month period. If you're an entrepreneur with a new idea, you don't want to necessarily get into a 5-year lease. So we really had some conversations and some really tough discussions as far as how that goes. So our 17 vacant and underutilized buildings, we have filled 7 of them so far within less than a year's time with new businesses, and it's been a really exciting project. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I'd like to turn next in order of our slides here to Mark, the Chief Resilience Officer in Charleston, to speak about your experience.
Well, thank you very much, and I would also like to thank the Evergreen Foundation here as well as the Bluebird Philanthropies for having us up here today. So for those of you that don't know, Charleston is a small southern city of about 150,000 people, very historic, but it's also a very well-preserved city. We take preservation very seriously in our city. We're surrounded by 3 rivers that all come together to meet the Atlantic Ocean, so Charleston has a flooding problem. What's interesting about Charleston and flooding is we don't discriminate. We take it from all sources, whether it's tidal flooding, whether it's surge flooding. We've had 3 events in the last 4 years where we've had 3 feet of water just come up through the city. And, but also this more extreme precipitation events are beginning to get us on a more frequent basis. So sea level rise, climate change is really something that's affecting us. So our problem is that we've loved the water. That's why everybody wants to be in Charleston. And that's also why, I don't know why we've built all our critical infrastructure downtown on the peninsula, but when it floods, it creates a real havoc downtown. So our problem was flooding, and the problem was getting people from point A to point B. The group that we wanted to focus on was how do we get people in and out of the city and keep the city running? How do we keep the city moving? And really, how do we help people adapt to what's going to be with us for the rest of my lifetime for sure, and probably most of the lifetimes for everyone. Our city is going to flood. We're going to be able to make it a little better, and hopefully over time even better than that, but it's going to flood for a good long while. So what we set out to do is create an app or some type of a device where we could give tailored information to residents that they could use in planning out their day. We wanted to use the best science available, and we were out seeking the best science, and we were able to get the best science to create flood prediction models. And what we wanted to know is, what did the citizens want? What would they like to see in that model? And for me, our target audience, my target audience, was the single parent that has to get children up in the morning, drop some off at preschool, some off at school, and still get to work on time. The last thing that person needs is to unexpectedly get stuck in a flood, which could take them an hour or 2 extra to get to work, or maybe not even get to work, or more importantly, be able to get back to their kids after school. So if we could solve that problem, we could really solve a problem for everybody else within the city. So that was our challenge, our problem, and I could talk a little bit more about the process, how we went through it later.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. And Joe, if you could speak about your experience in Boston.
Cool. Thank you as well for having us here. Like Mayor Orr, I absolutely love it up here. As the city of Boston approaches its 400th birthday, we have a goal of a thriving, healthy, and innovative city for all. But one of the main challenges we're facing is we have a lot of aging infrastructure, like I know many of you in this room can sympathize with. And in Boston, like in many cities, a lot of times our poorest quality infrastructure is in our lowest income neighborhoods. And for certain types of infrastructure, such as sidewalks, we rely on our 311 system to really manage maintenance and repair. But in Boston, residents in higher income neighborhoods are almost twice as likely to use the 311 system as in lower income neighborhoods. So it's kind of inadvertently reinforcing that inequity in the infrastructure condition. So while we're proud of our 311 system and how democratic it is, we realize it's not really a equitable or sustainable way to be managing infrastructure. So we applied to the Mayor's Challenge with a bold idea. It's a equity-focused, data-driven approach to plan, implement, and communicate street infrastructure investments. In short, we really want to use equity-based master planning, coupled with being even more responsive to 311 requests to improve infrastructure in the areas that need it most. And we started with sidewalks because they're a manageable scale and we have a lot of data on them and they're core to civic life. So through the testing and learning phase of the Mayor's Challenge, we grew that idea into a program called Streetcaster. We spent 6 months with great technical support and funding from Bloomberg Philanthropies, really testing and learning and engaging residents throughout the city in how we plan infrastructure work, how we do infrastructure work, and resident experience and communication as well. Some of the sort of interesting things that we learned through the process is really seeing the appetite for change among staff. You know, while we talked to 1,400 residents and engaged, you know, about 900 of them in different testing and prototyping activities, it was the staff at times who was just as excited about doing this in a different way. And then, you know, also we heard from residents a lot that when it comes to transparent communication about infrastructure, too much detail can be as confusing as not enough. And so those are two lessons that we've sort of taken forward, and you know we're really excited to implement this into the way the public works and other agencies do business going forward, and looking forward to eliminating the infrastructure gap throughout the city and really providing better services for everyone.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to just ask a few questions to each of the panelists. I'll come back if I can start with you, Mayor Orr. We heard that the test and learn phase made quite the impact in Cheyenne. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the value was to you and to your city of this way of working?
Yeah, absolutely. So the test and learn, especially our newspaper, our local daily, government to talk about testing and learning and prototyping. My daughter's in college and she was prototyping too, and I said, yeah, we are now at the city, and who would have thought? But really what we did throughout the test and learn phase was we really used social media and then just direct invitations. We sought out young millennials. They have a professional organization, our Chamber of Commerce, certainly the building community, and we engaged them in 3 different ways. We had a really large community engagement, and then we had a second, and that was essentially this large party that we talked about, where we storyboarded and took everybody through what it would look like to essentially make these matches. And then we found actual building owners and some businesses that were basically in their garage and looking for additional space. And we had a much smaller testing phase with them. And then we finally just got together and pulled our team together and took the results from that and went forward.
That's great. So I'd love to hear, you know, Mike Bloomberg is someone who believes that a culture of innovation in a city really has to start at the top, and that is with the mayor. Innovation, as we know, involves testing new things and certainly being prepared to fail, which is something that city government does not tend to be very comfortable with. So as a mayor, how do you encourage people to take those kinds of risks?
Being willing to fail is something that I really had to coach my team about, and taking risks is not something that we do well in government. And I inherited an administration with the prior mayor, lovely man, but he was known as Mayor Maybe. And so we really went forward and had to tell the team that it was okay to make a decision and have it be maybe not necessarily the right decision. But that, again, is how we test and we learn from our mistakes.
That's great. Great. Let's see, we'll go back to Mark if we can. Mark, so right from the outset, you were really committed to co-creating and did a lot of user testing with residents of early models of the FloodCon app. Why was this important to you?
Well, let me just start by saying Charleston is a city that almost all of what we do in government and city government, we involve the citizens. But this whole idea of co-creation was taking it actually one step further. So we were really excited. Our team, we had a small core team, but a much larger team of folks throughout the city that wanted to be involved. And we were 100% in. Bloomberg makes you go to boot camp in order to get into this process, which was really a challenging couple of days. And then you get coaches assigned, which at times even felt more challenging. So we really had to be 100% into the process, and we all had to just give up everything that we had thought that we knew, and we really embraced the process. So the co-creating for us was really important because here we had an opportunity, we were funded, we had the time, we were given the space to just really try to do this with the residents. And what we learned was just fantastic, working with the residents and understanding what their needs and putting their needs absolutely first as we went through this process. Turned out for us to be a really rewarding experience.
That's great. It's great to hear that, that we're keeping you all challenged. So can you talk a little bit about, how that testing process helped you to build support with your residents, and perhaps if there's any kind of key lessons that you learned along the way or surprises, that'd be great to hear.
Well, we did. We learned a couple of real key lessons. So our first test was just a simple card sorting. We had a bunch of ideas. We asked people to put down, if you could have the app, what was it that you would want to see? And we thought we had all the ideas, but really what went into the we really want to see this column was not what we thought would be in the really want to see this column. So we realized early on that we were looking at it from our perspective, and we kind of flipped it around and saw it from their perspective. I think the other thing that we really learned was that there was a lot of stuff already going on in the community that we didn't know. So the businesses were already adapting, but they were doing it really clunky. And that wasn't their fault. The information just wasn't available in any kind of a coherent way, the very problem that we were trying to solve for them. So when we actually sat down and had really good interviews with the businesses, we found out what they were doing, and it enabled all of us, them, ourselves, and the citizens to kind of co-create this device so that it could better help them get their job accomplished. And the best example that I'll use, and this really didn't even dawn on us, was you have a person who runs a medical practice where they've got offices all around the city. They may have 6 or 8 offices around the city. Those doctors have to move to those different 8 offices at different times throughout the day. And they've got to transfer patients around. Well, there may be times where those streets and roads to those offices are cut off that either the doctor can't get there or the patient can't get there. And that's real money when you begin to talk about doctors, patients getting together and working. So the ability to be able to give them something in a very real time could tell them which roads might be flooded, what an alternate route might be so that they could keep their business thriving, or in advance cancel appointments was something they were really excited about.
That's great. I think what you have both spoken to, what we were very excited to see was that cities went out with a particular set of assumptions, and then through the testing phase learned so much about what was right and frankly what was wrong. Right. But that's also critical in the process to developing solutions that are really going to matter to people. That's great. Joe, we know that Boston City Hall, particularly through the Office of New Urban Mechanics, has been committed to innovation for a long time. The Mayor's Challenge Test and Learn phase really emphasized human-centered design. Can you speak a bit about how this method was used to advance your idea?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate in Boston to have a civic innovation team for going on 10 years now that's carried over through 2 administrations, starting with Mayor Menino and now with Mayor Walsh. And, that support is just essential to what we're able to do. And, when it comes to human-centered design, we've kind of had this same approach for many years that Bloomberg really helped us enhance, that it's not just about data. It's not just about dashboards and sensors and KPIs. It's about people first and figuring out how those things can be put to good use in service of what residents are actually telling you they need. So we take this approach of really exploring, experimenting, and evaluating on many different programs. But through this challenge, we were sort of we were challenged to do it in some different ways, and structuring our work a little bit differently, and also communicating about it a little differently as well.
That's great. In addition to human-centered design, are there other testing methods that you used through this challenge that found particularly effective engaging residents?
Kind of core to this was just tapping into a sense of excitement that was already there. Residents in Boston really, they care about the public realm. They take a lot of pride in it, and are incredibly knowledgeable about it as well. And so, for this project, tapping into that was kind of easy, and building on that excitement, just because this is a serious topic, it doesn't need to be a dull one, So one of the hallmarks of the Champions phase was our Streetcaster Sidewalk Fair. That was a celebration of the public realm that we held in a sort of highly trafficked residential area, but at a cross-section of commuters and business district as well. And it was a Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and we drew out 400 people to talk about sidewalks, and have them talk to public works workers and share their values and how we should prioritize things, and look at new materials and technologies and techniques and walk on them and have their dogs pee on them and stuff like that. It was great, and to be able to tap into that excitement and have that fuel the direction of the program was just huge.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I'd love to ask the same final question to all three of you, and we'll just kind of go down the line. If you had to give one piece of advice to other cities on how to better engage residents, what would that be? I'll start with you, Mayor.
Oh, great, I get to go first. Really, it's about going out into the community again, and especially for government, as it was mentioned earlier from Charleston, going in not thinking that you have the answers and that you're going to solve everything for everybody. I'll just throw in, my chief of staff called me yesterday, and one of our 6th grade classes in Cheyenne called, and they are getting together as a class to define a problem. So they all have to agree on a problem within the community, and then they're going to test and they're going to prototype the solutions. So somehow, even within our schools, we've gotten this Bloomberg challenge. And let me tell you, for a really, really red state, anything Bloomberg, they thought I was taking away their guns and their soda pops. So for Wyoming to come along, yes. So from Wyoming to come along with this challenge, it's just been a great thing. Thank you.
That's great.
I mean, I think I totally agree with what Mayor Orr said, but also just tapping into what I was mentioning about the sidewalk fair, just, even though a topic is a serious and really, critical one, it doesn't need to be dull, and just, trying to tap into and help amplify that sense of excitement that can already be there about it can, I think, really help you get the best input and results.
I think my advice would be already what's been set up on stage here. One is that there's this really deep knowledge that exists in your community. Just being able to take the time to listen to it is really important. But also, when they have an opportunity to converse with you, it may change them. And I'll just give you one quick example. Our test 1 came out with a certain set of results. We thought for sure these folks would want to know why it's flooding. We thought for sure that was going to happen. They didn't care about why it was flooding. All they cared about was why they couldn't get to work. That's all that mattered to them, and why it took them longer to get to work. So we honored their desires. We honored where they wanted to take us. In test 2, we came back with a 5-day period where we sent them forecasts, we sent them flood forecasts, and we brought them all back together and said, how did that work? They said, it worked great, except now we want to know why. And so that was what we ended up with in test 3. We made a complete circle. In test 3, we provided a whole bunch of education in the app, and it turned out that everybody was really where we thought they might want to be in the beginning, but what was missing was the bigger picture for them and really what was happening. So just be prepared for that really deep knowledge, and the fact that the more they know, the more your citizens get engaged with your city, the more they may want to know, and that you're going to have to be ready to pivot with that as you go through the process.
I think that's great. Thank you all. I mean, I think what we're so excited about in this year's Mayor's Challenge was not only the ideas that came forward, which we found incredibly exciting, but was also this opportunity to work with cities on a different way of working, which we really hope is not only applicable to these particular ideas, but introduces a new way of thinking and working with residents and with problem solving throughout the city. So thank you to all of you for all of your work over the past many months and for coming today, and thank you all for having us here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.